thought it was important enough because people throw their content models together and they kind of forget about thinking about how it's named, how content is named throughout the system. And so sometimes you'll get lists of content and you read the list of content and it just doesn't really make sense, or it relates to how they're going to use the content today, but not really what the content is.
Yeah. And like how you name that is this going to live on a long time. A lot of our customers have been around for like years and years. And so that decision you made on naming something one day back in 2010, and that sort of lives on forever. So really taking the effort into putting that together and deciding what the names are going to be before you set it all up, it's really important. And how you talk about your content with those names, those are going to be how you refer to things.
And this isn't just the models, like the lists or whatnot. This is fields too, right, Joel? So like the title field or the date field or these different things like that, being very specific or using the word category and tags are very generic. Do they make sense? Are they going to change over time? You gotta look at your organization and how does your organization use these content terms and things like that. So for example, blog posts, a lot of people use blog posts as a generic thing for articles and all sorts of things. But if the company's posting those in areas that isn't a blog posting or they're not using that blog, they're like, someone might say, oh yeah, I wrote an article and put it in our blog list. And we're like, but we don't have a blog. They might not know they even have a blog on their website, right? So that terminology isn't what their organization uses. You want to relate the two, not just for the people currently using the system, but new people coming in and learning your business, your organization, your industry even. If a certain term is used and it's inconsistent, they could get very confused and not be able to communicate properly between team members.
The other thing that can happen is that if you outsource this, if you hand over your content model to a developer who is doing a great job potentially at sort of building your website, and then what's going to happen is the content will be tailored based on what that developer thinks. And then sometimes you'll even get a situation where developers will they'll use something for a field name. So maybe a field name is like, category name. And then as opposed to doing category space name, it'll be category name, all one word, because they were in the developer mindset. So you want to make sure that your representative who understands the content on your end, from your business point of view, is involved with the naming, so that you don't get something it may make sense to a developer, but it might not make sense or look natural to your content team.
Yeah. And this also links back to the search, the finding things. You're not going to find it if you don't know what to look for.
Right.
So, you got to name things properly and really think about that, and clean up old content and old names too. So I know we've changed some things over the years and added the same name with new on the end. The old one's still there. And you really should go back and change that old name, or put it in an archive folder or something like that, so that when you're doing searches or doing different things, you're not getting mixed up. Is it new? What do you mean new? Or these different things like that. So just keep that in mind.
All right. That's definitely a lot of, and the graphic here is important. I wanted to have a graphic of people at a whiteboard deciding what the names are ahead of plugging them into a system. So definitely when you're thinking about content architecture and thinking about what it's going to be, you can draw it out ahead of time, and there's a lot of benefit to that. And this seems like it's on repeat, John, but it's pretty much the exact same slide that we had in the last one, but we can't emphasize it enough.
Yeah, 100%. Usability is critical. If you can't actually get your work done, what is the point of having these platforms? It just takes too much time. You're wasting time if you can't get your work done. And we all know how busy we all are.
Yeah.
If you can't update your content quickly, you're falling behind, right? You're someone else who can do this has like an actual huge advantage. They can get things out quicker. They move faster. They're not bogged down, so they can do other things that could, create more revenue streams or expand the business. And this is a crazy one, and it might sound like I've talked to people about it. They're like, "Really, this is an issue?" And a major reason for turnover is employees feeling held back by their business. They can't move forward, their career development, these things, because of tooling and processes that are put into their business that just don't support what they want to get done. So You know, you have to retain your employees. You have to make it enjoyable to use these platforms. Also, if the system, you know, the employees start blaming the system, and then you end up replacing the system, but it was actually just a usability configuration issue, you've wasted a ton of time going back and kind of rebuilding things. The next one there, Joel? What's the next one on the list? The amount of content integrations in companies is only increasing. I think we kind of talked about this with the finding and searching for content as well. We can only hold so much in our mind. You know, maybe we built it initially, or we know how much content we had initially, but over time, we need to keep these platforms organized and keep us focused on what we have to do. If we're spending a lot of time trying to find the content, we're trying to find a lot of time going back in and adding in some text because it didn't have a required field validator, or it didn't have the image dimensions, if the image was too small, and now we have to go back and change 100 images and all make them a higher res because now we've launched an app that needs a higher res. Or like, that's crazy. That's a lot of work and can really add either it adds more work, or your team, your company decides not to go forward with that project.
Yeah. You just made my heart rate go up and my blood pressure spike, John.
Sorry, Joel. So I do that all the time now. Used to that. And then the easier, quicker you can get your work done, the better your work will be, and the better you can collaborate and move on to the next thing. We all need more time. So usability will save you time, save you money, save your sanity, all those type of things. So, you know, all of these things are really critical to stay on top of. And I see, Joel, you just answered that question from Ella. Do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, so Ella was talking about you don't need to surface the schema to editors. It's a really great point. The way, I'm going to be specific to Agility here, the way Agility works is there's an actual content modeling section in Agility where you set up essentially the schemas or the models for each kind of content that you want to make available. And then there's a whole different area called the content area where your editors actually go in and work with that content. So no, you don't have to surface the schema to them. They don't need to see all that stuff. And all of the work that we do as content architects to set up these models is to make their life simpler and to give them only what we need them to see.
Yeah. But the one thing I will add to that, Ella, is that, and Joel touched on this earlier, the larger companies that have the capacity, that have the resources, you know, really should be investing in a content architect, a role that actually works with the editors, works with the developers, architects, models, does these things, verifies, tests, and takes those things after it's been built and shows the editors and walks through it with them and like make sure, and they learn your content better, they learn the editors better, they learn the developers. They're kind of that bridge point. A lot of project managers or just technical architects do these roles often, but we're seeing a lot of change in the industry, and the large organizations are bringing in specifically content architects that can do this work.